25 years after email has gone mainstream, a large portion of society is addicted to compulsively checking it. In fact, data reveals half of workers are checking communication channels every 6 minutes or less. And author Cal Newport, he tackles this phenomenon in his new book, With a World Without Email, Reimagining Work in an Age of Communication Overload, What a World Would Constant Chatter and Notifications Could Do for Workers' Productivity. Professor at Georgetown, New York Times bestselling author Cal Newport, he joins us now to talk about it. Cal, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Of course, happy to do it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, some people know this. I have been a fan of Cal's work for years. His book, Digital Minimalism, legitimately changed my life. What did you set out to do in this book, Cal, that you've already started off? You have digital minimalism, you have deep work. What is this like when we can think of it within those couple of books and your long career, what you're trying to convey as you have for a long time?
Well, in my book, Deep Work, I was arguing for the importance of focus in the workplace, which seemed to be becoming more rare. And after that book came out, I began to ask the question, well, why is it so rare? I mean, why do we work in such a way that it's impossible to get even 10 or 15 minutes of undistracted time? And that started to tumble me down this rabbit hole into understanding in all the ways that the way we work today has really become corrupted.
And let's talk about that in terms of the average workplace. A lot of the people who watch this show, they're probably doing it while they're even doing something else. And that's okay. I support them doing that. But in terms of multitasking, checking your email, checking your text messages, Slack notifications, and more, what is that doing to people's workflow while they're working?
Well, the big villain here is cognitive context shifts. So every time you switch your attention from one thing you're focusing on to something else, a complex neurochemical process called a context shift begins. It takes a while. So if you're just going to, let's say, glance at an inbox, initiate one of these context shifts, and then bring your attention back to what you were trying to do, you're going to have a cognitive price to pay there, which is going to be lowered ability to think and exhaustion. And so we do this all day. So all day long, we're putting ourselves into a state of lowered thinking ability and mental exhaustion.
And Cal, what would you say to somebody out there? I've felt this way in the past, man. Hey, look, I can't turn off my email notifications, Cal, because my boss expects me to be online all the time. That's just the way that it is. What would you tell that person?
That's what we have to fix. This is the crisis. I mean, essentially what I document is that email spread throughout the offices of the world in the 1990s because it solved real problems. It was better than a fax machine. It was better than voicemail. It was better than memos. But in its wake came this new way of collaborating, what I call the hyperactive hive mind, in which we just work everything out on the fly with unscheduled back and forth messages. It's this hyperactive hive mind mode of collaboration that forces us to have to check these inboxes all the time. It makes it very difficult for us to solve the problem with just better habits or better tips or etiquette. And I think the only solution is we have to start from scratch and say, how do we actually want to collaborate? Because I don't think just rock and rolling in an inbox is turning out to be a very good answer to that question.
What does ideal collaboration look like, Cal? What do you talk about in the book?
Well, I think we need to break it down by process. The different things you do in your job, the different things your team does on a regular basis, the different things your company does. And for each, say, how do we actually want to work this collaboration and put a rule or system in place for that particular process? And the metric we want to be minimizing here is unscheduled messages. We need to find a way to do all of the different things that we do in our work without having to just wait in an inbox for messages to come back and forth. There's no one miracle tool. There's no one process that's going to replace email everywhere. It's about this mindset of there's good and bad ways to collaborate, and we have to actually think intentionally about all of the different places that this collaboration happens.
And Cal, when we're thinking about the history of this and more, as you said, it's not like email didn't have a use in the past. It was obviously better than faxes or letters or anything. How did it evolve organically to the point where people feel so overwhelmed and miserable all of the time because of their relationship with technology?
Well, this is one of the big ideas I claim in the book, which is we brought in email for very pragmatic reasons to replace specific communication that already existed with a better tool. This hyperactive hive mind way of collaboration followed in its wake, and it was largely accidental. This is my claim that no one ever sat back and said this is a better way to work. No one ever wrote a big Harvard Business Review study that said this would make us more productive. If anything, I think it's actually holding down national productivity. It was largely an emergent phenomenon. You put the low-friction digital communication tools onto our desktops, and this is what just began to happen. I think it's important to emphasize the arbitrary nature of this way of working, because it gives us a lot more confidence that we can and should explore alternatives.
Absolutely. And so, Cal, where can people find out more, not just about your book, about your own work, podcasts, etc.?
I have a website, calnewport.com, and I have a podcast called Deep Questions. I don't, however, have any social media accounts, and as you might imagine, am not that easy to reach on email.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good thing. And like I said, Cal personally inspired me to mostly leave Twitter. So thank you very much for that, Cal. Really appreciate it. I hope everybody goes out there and buys the book, and we will see you all later.